Hello and welcome to today's program. I am Ogechuku Ukegwe. The Federal Executive Council has approved a 4.8 billion naira fund for the procurement of 150,000 HIV treatment packs, ensuring continuous care for those living with the virus. The decision, announced after the FEC meeting on Monday, is part of the government's effort to strengthen domestic funding for HIV treatment. It comes amid concern over the potential impacts of the recent U.S. policy shifts on the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS relief, which has been a major source of HIV funding in Nigeria. Speaking on the approval, the Coordinating Minister for Health and Social Welfare, Ali Pate, emphasized the importance of sustaining HIV treatment efforts, particularly as international AIDS dynamic shifts.
The second major approval is approval for the presidential treatment program for HIV patients, 150,000 treatment packs, total of 4.8 billion naira to be delivered over 4 months. That is an important statement that the federal government is making to ensure that those who are already HIV infected, even though we have partners that are supporting the treatment, but federal government is already putting its resources to contribute. And we see that that is a signal that the support that the government is providing to those who are vulnerable to reduce the cost and to ensure that life-saving treatment is available. The third element is a discussion that Council had regarding the recent U.S. government's policy pronouncements on development assistance and the implications on health of Nigerians, HIV, TB, and malaria. And while we significantly appreciate all the contribution of the U.S. government over the last 20 years, and we continue to look forward to a constructive partnership with the U.S. government in the period ahead, Nigerian government under the president is looking towards transforming the sector that is nationally owned, using national systems, and using our domestic financing as well as other sources of financing to ensure that those who are on treatment do not lose the treatment that they are already on.
We'll take a break now and the program will resume shortly. Welcome back. World Cancer Day 2025 is a global initiative dedicated to raising awareness and enhancing understanding of cancer risk, prevention, detection, and treatment. This year marks the launch of the new United by Unique campaign, which emphasizes a people-centered approach to cancer care. This approach represents a transformative shift in how cancer and health services are designed and delivered, focusing on the needs of individuals, families, and community at the core of health system. It moves beyond just treating the disease to considering the perspective and experience of patients, caregivers, family, and community. The goal is to create health systems that are responsive, trusted, and tailored to meet the holistic needs and preference of those they serve. While joining me on the program to discuss further is the co-founder, Life Fund Foundation, European Board, and also a certified surgical oncologist, Dr. Ademola Adeyeye. Thank you for joining us on the program. So what are the most significant barriers to equitable cancer care worldwide, and how can we address them?
Yeah, so that's a very important and interesting question, because the ideal thing is that cancer care should not be a privilege. It should be accessible and a right to everyone who requires it. But unfortunately, there are a number of barriers that have made it not possible for everybody to have appropriate cancer care. I've used the letter M to remember, or at least to simplify those barriers. Those include money, manpower, materials, machines, and of course, mechanisms, or what we call policies. And so when there are no policies in place, it's part of whatever money you have available, you misuse the resources. The same way too, if you don't have materials or you don't have the machines to treat the patients, then you won't be able to offer the best of services. And of course, manpower is very key. But of all of these things, the most important is money, because socioeconomic factors are the things that tend to drive the disparity between the so-called rich countries in the global north and the low and middle income countries in the global south.
So cancer disparity continue to exist across different population. What are the key factors contributing to these disparities, and what can be done to ensure equitable access to early detection and treatment for all communities?
Yeah, you're very correct about this. The WHO did a study about 10 years ago where they showed that the most important factor that determines long-term outcome and survivorship in cancer is not the stage of the cancer, and it's not even the type of the cancer, but actually where the person lives. So, and it's all about access. So if a patient in Nigeria has stage 4 cancer, that person has less than 5% chance of being alive after 5 years of the diagnosis of that stage. Whereas if you have the same patient in a high-income country like in New York, in the United States of America, where they have some of the top cancer centers in the world, that person has between 33% to 50% chance of being alive after 5 years. So the main important ingredient is access, and not just access, accessibility, availability, and affordability. So it all revolves around the bottom line, that when there are socioeconomic factors in play, it tends to drive that disparity. So in a struggling country that doesn't have the finances to even put lights on in the streets and put food on the table, trying to take care of different conditions like cancer becomes a very tall order. And so if we're able to readdress and find ways, ingenuitive ways of addressing that socioeconomic gap, it can actually help to bridge that disparity between the high-income countries and the low and middle-income countries.
How does access to early detection and screening impact cancer outcome, and what can be done to make these services more accessible to undeserved populations?
Very important question too. So we've known a long time ago that screening and early detection is probably one of the most important factors that helps in improving cancer outcomes. And it's best to treat cancer either in its precancerous stage or at the earliest stage possible. And we've seen many examples in conditions like breast cancer and even colorectal cancer. And that's why in a country like Nigeria, where we do not have a framework for community screening of some of these important conditions, we tend to see the patients appear at very late stages, and that causes a very poor outcome. Whereas in countries where they have a structured approach to screening and early detection, they tend to have very good survivorship. And so we need to tackle it in different fronts. I know that there are many organizations and people who go out and do opportunistic screening, but that only will help for a small fraction of the population, and it's not sustainable. So we have to create a platform where there's a mechanism in place to ensure that there's essential screening that is affordable, that is accessible, and that is acceptable to the population, to pick on time those early conditions before they become full-blown and difficult to treat. And at the same time too, there should be money and financial willpower to back up those processes too. Because a healthy nation is a wealthy nation, but a nation that is submerged in all manner of diseases will have low productivity, and that tends to protect the cycle of poverty. So investing in healthcare is actually a good deal because it helps improve the GDP of the nation. And cancer is one of the core killers of young adults and elderly people in the world today.
So how does the United by Unique team reflect the diversity of cancer experience among individuals, and why is it important to recognize the differences in cancer care?
Yeah, so again, that's a very important point. So this theme is quite interesting and novel because it's trying to show two sides of the same coin. It talks about uniqueness and also talks about unity. So the truth of the matter is that cancer is a clear and present danger. It affects every country in the world. It cuts across race, across gender, across socioeconomic status. So in that way, we're all united in that challenge we face. But at the same time too, everybody's experience, everybody's treatment is personalized. Gone are the days when we give everybody the same kind of treatment for the same kind of cancer. We've now found out that there are different kinds of cancers based on their unique profiles that have different ways in which they respond to different treatments at different stages of the condition. And so the aim thing now is to personalize or tailor-make the patient's treatment and experience based on that patient's unique experiences and the cancer's profile. So it's like somebody goes to a school and you want to sew a school uniform for the children. You will not say that you will sew the school uniform based on a specific measurement, because they have different kinds of students in that school. Some are tall, some are short, some are on the big side, some are slim. And so you have to tailor-make the treatment of cancer, just like that analogy, for the patient so that you can have the best response. And we've seen this even in our own local studies in Nigeria. We found out that when cancer treatment was first initiated, many of the studies were based on data and experience from a Western or Caucasian population. And the kind of conditions that they see in terms of cancers is slightly different from what we see there. And at the same time, too, the treatment approaches are also very different too. So we have a particular kind of breast cancer, which we call a triple negative breast cancer, that has almost no special receptors that can make it effective with some of the common cancer drugs. That condition is very uncommon in the Western population, but in Nigeria is a top kind of cancer that we see in the breast of women. And so the treatment algorithm for those patients has to be very different. The same thing too we are seeing with even cancer of the large intestine too and the rectum. And so ultimately, the theme that WHO is trying to push for this year is try to highlight the importance of tailor-making and personalizing cancer care for our population, while at the same time recognizing the fact that everybody experiencing that same kind of challenge of cancer cutting across gender, cutting across geography, and cutting across geopolitical strata.
What innovations or new treatments are emerging in cancer care, and how might they help close the care gap in both developed and developing countries?
Yeah, so again, that's a very interesting question, very, very appropriate at this time, because change is really constant in life, and innovation and adaptability is what potentiates the survival of a species. At the same time, too, we found out that there are many upcoming innovations that have made the cancer space very exciting, and it's made it much more effective. The thing that comes ready to mind is the role of artificial intelligence, or AI, in cancer diagnosis. So we found out that AI-driven technologies have improved the accuracy and the predictability of cancer treatment regimens and cancer diagnostic regimens, if I must say. And we will see AI coming into play more and more in the coming days. Already we are using AI to support the screening of breast cancer in terms of mammography and even other types of screenings for our patients. Apart from artificial intelligence, what we have realized is that people want to have what's called a point of care contact in terms of cancer diagnosis. Nobody wants to go to the hospital and spend many hours waiting in line to get a treatment done. And at the same time, so you don't want to go have an expensive or very invasive and possibly painful and uncomfortable test to be done. And so people are now developing point of care tests that can be done in a home, that can be done in an office, and you can get the same kind of results in terms of making a diagnosis or even for screening for cancers too. So I'll give one important example, and that will emphasize the importance of being ingenious in trying to provide solutions to help in diagnosis. So, cancer of the large intestine traditionally is diagnosed by putting a camera, which we call a colonoscope, into the anus of an individual, and it looks through the rectum and the large bowel to find out if there are any cancerous or precancerous conditions. Of course, you can imagine how uncomfortable it can be to have a long pipe being inserted into one's back passage. And not everybody needs to have that. And so in the past, people used to have stool tests to find out whether there are blood particles in the stool. And the assumption is that if there's blood in the stool, it may be a sign that that person may be harboring a cancerous growth. However, that technology doesn't hold sway in a country like Nigeria, in Africa in general, because we have lots of conditions like infections, parasites in the intestine that can cause blood in the stool. So those stool-based tests that work well for Caucasian populations don't work well for our communities. At the same time, too, it's not socially acceptable for our African patients to bring stool samples, sometimes three separate stool samples, to detect whether there's a need to have that camera test done or not. And so there are novel ideas we've done where you can actually test a patient's urine by using a small strip of paper that has some certain chemicals that can react to the presence of those precancerous or cancerous conditions in the body. And those point of care tests can be done in a patient's home, can be done in the clinic, just like one is doing pregnancy tests to find out if there's trace of pregnancy in the urine. And so we are seeing more and more of these simple novel ideas come up that will refine and make cancer accessibility and more suitable to our population. In the Western world, they are developing multi-platform blood tests that can detect as many as 10 to 15 cancers in the body at the same time too. So those are some of the innovations that are being driven in terms of diagnostics. In terms of treatment, we are seeing more and more smarter tools, and such as using medications that can tweak or rejig the immune system of a patient to fight cancer, what we call immunotherapy. And even there's also a role for even using nanoparticles that can actually target those cancer cells. So the cancer space is quite filled with a lot of exciting innovation that are coming to mainstream. And I'm sure that in the next couple of years, we will see all of these things being routine in the medical practice.
In what way can global cancer advocacy efforts celebrate our shared experiences while recognizing the unique challenges that different communities face?
Yeah, so again, this is a very strong point. Cancer care is not a one-man show. It requires advocacy, it requires collaboration. It involves the participation of stakeholders such as healthcare practitioners, the patients themselves, patient advocacy groups, researchers, policymakers, and other umbrella bodies to come together to drive that advocacy. What we have now are people going about doing their own thing and operating in silos, but we cannot operate in silos in this. We all have to come together to collectively put our efforts together to drive that initiative. And that's why we talk about cancer care being more of a multidisciplinary team approach rather than a solo approach. So if we have a platform where people come together to collaborate, to communicate, and to push forward different forms of advocacy from the level of prevention and screening up to diagnosis, up to even treatment and even palliative care for those who have end-stage conditions. All of these things coming together with advocacy can actually push forward and change the narrative of cancer care. And ultimately, that will help overall in our patients. Because what we have now is fragmented approaches to the same problem. People trying to reinvent the wheel and not learning from other people's mistakes. But if we share our experiences, we share expertise, and we share the knowledge that we have available, we will definitely have a better story to tell in a couple of years' time.
What are the ways cancer treatment should be personalized to fit the unique needs of each patient, and how has personalized medicine evolved in recent years?
Yeah, again, very, very important point and very insightful. So like I said earlier on, the in thing now is not just to make a diagnosis of cancer, but you need to understand what is called the biology or the profile of that cancer. What are the genetic components of that cancer that makes it different from other kinds of cancers of the same origin? So the fact that somebody has cancer of the breast doesn't mean that all cancer of the breast are the same. The only thing that makes them similar is the location. So it's just like somebody being a Nigerian. The only thing that may make somebody uniquely a Nigerian is the passport, Nigerian passport. But we speak different languages. We have almost 250 tribes and clans in Nigeria. So the fact that we all live in the same country on the same geographical space doesn't mean that we are the same. So in the same way too, we need to determine what language does this cancer speak, and what way can we address and fight these cancers? And that comes to the role of what's called molecular profiling. So there are different molecular profiling that are done to find out the specific species, specific type of cancer that we're dealing with. Some of them involve the use of genetic studies of the cancers, and some can even involve simple blood tests to check if there are special proteins that the cancers carry. Some proteins include receptors, and they even include what we call ligands. So by doing those special molecular profiling, which I don't want to go into details because I don't want to get lost in that side of the discussion, that helps us to refine and break down the kind of cancer we're dealing with. And each type of cancer, subtype of cancer, has its own treatment that will work for it. And definitely, once we have that kind of approach, the outcomes are better. Like I tell my clients, anytime you're exposed to chemotherapy or immunotherapy, we cannot guarantee response. because people are different in the way they respond. And that aspect of molecular profiling also helps us predicting response, even predicting outcome. But what we can guarantee is side effects. Because if one is on chemotherapy and has little or no side effects, it's likely that medication is fake, because chemotherapy on its own is toxic to the body. And so what we need to do is to find a way in which we limit the toxicity and maximize the efficacy. And the best way to approach that is to find a personalized approach, detecting the specific type of cancer that will respond to that kind of medication, so that when we administer the medication, irrespective of the side effects, we can guarantee more that there will be response.
So can you explain how research is taking into consideration the accounts of the unique needs of this diverse population in the development of new cancer treatments and therapies?
Very valid and very important point. So like I mentioned at the beginning, the earlier studies of cancer treatment and cancer drug development were biased towards the Western and Caucasian population, because many of those studies were conducted in areas where there were very little representation of Blacks, Asians, and other ethnic minority groups. And so when we had those treatments translated to our own environment, we're getting inferior or mixed results. And later on, when more studies were done, incorporating the reality on ground, incorporating more ethnic backgrounds, we now found out that there were different kinds of conditions of the same type of cancer that we needed to highlight, and that influenced therapy. And so more and more research now is being done to make sure that we identify those gaps where underdeserved and underrepresented populations in previous studies now get a say, and we have more studies to show about it. So research has been able to drive the innovation that we see in the cancer sphere. The research has made us realize that there are different types of therapies that will probably give a Black person and that has cancer. For example, let me give an instance now. Prostate cancer, which is the commonest cancer in men worldwide. That cancer in a Caucasian population tends to grow very slowly. And in fact, there's a 25% chance that without treating that prostate cancer, the client will not have any problems with it in a Western population, in a Caucasian population. But the fact is completely different in a Black population. Black patients with prostate cancer tend to have a very aggressive disease because they have peculiar genetic makeups in that cancer that makes it tend to spread to different parts of the body more early and more deadly in nature. And so when a Black person has prostate cancer, we tend to treat it aggressively because we know we're dealing with a kind of aggressive disease. All that came out from the results of research. And research is the only thing that will drive innovation, not just in a healthcare space, but in life in general. And so that quest for knowledge, that quest for asking questions and knowing what's the next big thing will always help in improving cancer outcomes in our population.
So what would you say is the most significance of the World Cancer Day? And for the team, what do you think inspires this year's theme?
All right. So the World Cancer Day was first celebrated in the year 2000. And it was with that mindset to increase global awareness about the dangers of cancer and to create a platform to be able to discuss about it and to strategize. And every theme for the year helps to refine and structure approaches towards it. And that's why it's deliberate that the World Cancer Day is celebrated much earlier in the year so that people have a theme or a slogan to run with for that year. So this theme of uniqueness and unity is trying to promote a balance between serving as many people as possible, while at the same time identifying individual personalized needs for cancer care. And I believe that once we're able to strike that balance, we can definitely have a very robust outcome for our patients. And definitely those things also help to guide policies, also help people to think about the best ways in which to innovate. People without direction and without vision would lose their way. And so with this kind of direction and vision that is set globally, it helps in the discussion that we have in the cancer space.
What initiatives are being taken to ensure that people from all walks of life, including those from marginalized communities, have access to cancer care that acknowledges their unique needs and challenges?
So I must be very honest, a lot still needs to be done to bridge that gap, that disparity. Let me give a point. About 10 years ago, the Lancet Commission they found out that up to 65% of all the cancers that we have across the world are found in sub-Saharan Africa, but only less than 5% of the global workforce that have been trained to treat cancer are located in that continent. So there's a huge disparity, and this was a study that was done 10 years ago. With the brain drain that has happened, with all the inflation and economic downturn that has affected many countries across Africa, the story is even sadder than was earlier illustrated. So we have a big task at hand to try to bridge that gap, to try to level the playing and to improve access for our clients. And again, it will take a lot of ingenuity. Research that we've been doing and that many of our colleagues are doing and will help in a way, but it can only go so much if there's funding available. I mentioned this novel strategy of trying to use urine tests to detect colon cancer. That urine test could be as cheap as doing a pregnancy test in the long term, which costs a very small fee compared to the stool tests that are very expensive and are not reliable, and even the camera tests that can cost as much as 100,000 naira or even more to get done. So if you are paying 100 naira for something that you would have paid 100,000 naira for, that definitely will improve the economic viability of screening and even for treatment too. And so it's all those innovative strategies of thinking outside the box to find a way in which we can manage the resources we have to bridge the gap between different populations. They will definitely help. So there's a role for researchers to bring out more and more innovative and cheaper solutions. There's a role for policymakers to create that enabling environment for researchers to work. There's a role for financiers to put in money. Like I said, a healthy nation is a wealthy nation, but a nation that is submerged in all manner of diseases, including cancers, will not be productive, and that will reduce GDP. So investing in healthcare is actually a way of investing in the economic probability and viability of a nation. So I feel that when we bring all of these ingredients together, we'll definitely have a better story to tell.
Well, the co-founder of Life Fund Foundation European Board, Dr. Ademola Adeyeye, thank you for speaking with us on the program. And that wraps up our program for today. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next time.